short for an adult male, only 6 meters in length, whereas I-47 on the right here was close to 7 meters. And it does imply perhaps that A37's had a prolonged issue with nutrition, not just an acute one. But if you think about their head width, so here I've just measured the width between the eye patches at the narrowest point. And A37's head was only a little over ½ meter wide, but I-47's head was closer to 1 meter. And if you look at the ratio of body length to head width, you can clearly see that this ratio is much higher for I-47, who is much fatter. So we can put this into a quantitative sense that we can use for monitoring changes over time, and that's really important for us. So, we think we've come up with a new monitoring tool that's working really well for us under the right conditions with the right permits. It's highly portable. We already have this developed and paid for by NOAA, so I don't have to budget it into my budget to go out and do this with resident killer whales. So for me, it's cost effective. It gives very high resolution imagery and very precise calculations. And we think it's very, very non-invasive. But we don't want to just think it's non-invasive, we want to demonstrate it is. So one of the, I think, the really great things that happened this summer was when we went to Fisheries and Oceans Canada and asked for a permit to fly at 100 feet, they said, no problem, but we want you to fly lower. And the reason they wanted us to fly lower is because they're getting a lot of applications from filmmakers, members of the public, to fly drones around killer whales and other marine mammals. And they wanted to know, how do these animals respond to that kind of flying so they could help them with their permit considerations. So we agreed on their request to do a parallel study where we fly at a number of graduated altitudes. And we fly over the whales at one altitude, move away, fly at another altitude, move away, and fly in at another altitude to see if we're not trying to elicit an effect, but to monitor their reaction and make sure we're not eliciting an effect. So this just shows a plot of altitude of the hexacopter over a 14-minute flight where we were doing this. For the first few minutes we flew in at a little over 100 feet, then we dropped down to a little over 60 feet, and we went as low as 30 feet. And I want to show you some of the video now, both from the boat and the hexacopter, to show you that even at 30 feet, we didn't get any observable response. At 30 feet, which is close to the height of the roof up here, we can't hear the hexacopter. The whales can't hear it, and they didn't observe it at all. And I'll show you some video to demonstrate that. So this first video you may have seen that's appeared online a fair bit is at 100 feet. So what we're doing now, I should have gone back. During our photogrammetry measurements, we're taking high-resolution still images. Even though Holly is seeing video on the screen, I'm triggering when to take a picture on the camera from my radio control station. But for this behavioral response study, we took video the whole time, so we had full video streams for looking at any response. So here's a little clip from the hexacopter at 100 feet. I think it's just beautiful. Here we go. There is no audio. But you can see these whales, they're not hurried, they're not being chased. They're moving along nice and slowly. It looks like they're in slow motion, they're not. This was members of the I-15s, the A-30s, the A-42s all together. Just stunning. So, this kind of video tells us there's an awful lot of utility on using this approach for behavioral monitoring as well as measurements. So we're just sliding the hexacopter along with the whales while we did this. But it's just absolutely stunning video. Okay, so that was at 100 feet. Now I want to show you, this is what it looks like from 30 feet. Again, from the video camera mounted on the hexacopter. And again, these whales are moving slowly. They're not alarmed. There's no sign that they see the hexacopter at all. It's just stunning. So this is, again, the hexacopter 30 feet above them. Same group, same day. No, that's just the ripple of the water that you're seeing here. Oh, no, not at 30 feet. But again, it's just spectacular to sit back and look at this. It looks like they're in slow motion.
Sell that as a screensaver, finance your entire...
And I think what we'd expect to see if the whales were noticing the hexacopter is them stopping, spy hopping, rolling over, looking. We certainly do that. We certainly see that with other disturbance. For example, if there's a float plane too low or something like that. These whales, we show no sign of it. We've so far done several of these behavioral response flights with absolutely no sign of any of that kind of behavior. The last video I'll show you is perhaps even more telling. So this is now going to be video from the boat that Lance is videoing while we're flying, which shows you the whales and the hexacopter in the same view, which is easier now because the hexacopter is lower.
So here we are starting our 30-foot trial.
So this is the hexacopter here. See, 30 feet is still not very low.
Hexacopter's coming in at
35, 34,
30 feet.
33,
See him?
32, nope. 32, 31, we're still at 14.8, no whales in view. 33, 31, no whales in view. 14, okay, got a whale.
Great.
Okay, come to the left.
So again,
Come down.
30 feet.
So I guess now Holly's telling me I'm directly over the whales, and look, there's no sign of these whales being hurried or noticing anything. They're just going along, resting nice and slow. And the hexacopter's directly above. Keep an eye on my voltage.
You're at
I'm going to
14.6.
zoom in a bit now.
They're right in the middle right now, coming up. So if you're moving a little, they come down a little.
Again, also notice how far the research boat is away. Lance is having to zoom in order to clearly see the whales in the hexacopter.
Always got them in
Okay,
frame.
14.7 volts, 31.
No reaction.
Slowly to the right. Slowly to the right, move with them. Slowly to the right, okay, a little bit up.
Okay, I'll stop there. You get the idea. So we will continue to do that work next year, to do more of these behavior response flights and more of our photogrammetry flights, but everything we see is really, really encouraging, non-invasive and very high precision, so we're quite excited. We just go through here. You know, there are many other uses of this kind of technology in addition just to photogrammetry, and one of them came upon us quite unexpectedly this year when one of the I-15s, this is I-103, a 9-year-old animal, became entangled in a gill net. There was a gill net opening in Johnson Strait. This is mid-August. This is one of the native fishermen. It was entangled in a gill net. We weren't there for this. This is a photograph taken off Bill Mackay's whale watching boat. We arrived shortly afterwards when this whale had been freed from the net. But apparently it was in the net for a period of up to an hour. You can see it was heavily entangled. And at that point, there was an entanglement response team in the area because I was concerned about humpback whales and nets. And that response team was there, but they didn't know what action they should take. They didn't know if the whale was still trailing gear, and also they didn't want to get very close to the whale in order to determine that. It was clearly stressed by this experience. So we were able to stay several hundred feet back, fly a hexacopter over the whale, and look to see if it was trailing gear and if they needed to affect any response. This is a photograph we got, and if you can see clearly, there are abrasions on the leading edge of this whale's dorsal fin. There are abrasions all around the tail, but there is no gear being trailed by this whale. So very quickly we were able to fly, do a flight that was only a few minutes long, bring it back, download the images and say, no, it's not trailing any gear. The best thing we can do is stay away from this whale for a while and monitor it at a distance. One thing I will note there is, again, look at its eye patches. This whale was skinny. And it makes you wonder if whales in poor body condition have to take more chances around nets, or if they're compromised in a way that may make it hard for them to detect nets. And I think, for me, it shows that we can do many things with this technology, but monitoring condition alongside behavior and looking at entanglement response and evidence of these kind of entanglements is also important monitoring that we can do. I'm going to wrap up in a minute. Hopefully there'll be time for some questions. This is a really fun image we got of a young male and a female that was only about 8 years old that were butting heads as they played. It's kind of the opposite of the message I want to tell, which is that this work isn't possible without a number of very, very key collaborations. I've been lucky throughout my whole career to have wonderful support and collaboration from Ken, so I wanted to thank Ken for that. But we have a team of people in a number of study areas that are very important. We hope that as we move forward, that this team will expand to include people in management positions, so that the kind of data we're getting can be used in a framework to more affect management in a more timely fashion. So we could say, hey, these whales are in poor condition, we need to do something about it, rather than say, hey, a bunch of whales have died, they were in bad condition 2 years ago. That doesn't help us as much. We plan to continue to monitor northern resident killer whales with our hexacopter. This year we hope to be monitoring southern resident killer whales with a hexacopter so that we can move forward to get simultaneous measurements of condition from both populations at the same time, and ideally do this through different times of the year to see if they were skinny in the spring and fattened up in the summer, or vice versa. We think it's a non-invasive tool that allows us to do this and collect data in the kind of time frames we need to. And I think I'll end there, but we should have plenty of time for questions. So, thank you. Okay, I got a question at the front here.
Can you or can you do this in the United States?
You can do this in the United States currently. So there's two main issues in the United States. One, first of all, you need FAA approval. If you're doing this professionally or for academic use, you're not a hobbyist, you need FAA approval, and that requires getting a certificate of authorization. To do that, you have to have a good, first of all, you have to get your aircraft approved, ours is, but you still need that certificate. Now, once you have a certificate of authorization, the NIMS permit office, because FAA view these as aircraft, the NIMS permit office view them as aircraft, which means that normally you have to fly above 1,000 feet. Impossible with this unless you need a permit, so you need a permit for that. So we can do both of these things. It's difficult to get certificates of authorization in the US currently because FAA are going through a review process for how to deal with drones. Their draft changes to their draft guidelines are due to come out later this year. They hope to have new policy in early next year, and with a bit of luck that will facilitate this, because what we hope they do is separate some of these large drones that are getting in the way of commercial aircraft from these smaller ones that are flying much lower. I haven't seen the draft ones, but I think after this year it's going to be much easier. This coming summer we'll still be operating in Canada, where we have Transport Canada have a lot more clearer guidelines. We already have permissions from them, but we hope to extend it into US airspace next year once the FAA have the regulations, and we'll go through the proper steps to do that. Don't know where to start. Let's start at the front. Yes, so we have already used this to fly over sperm whales in New Zealand to look at length. Next month I'll be in Chile flying over blue whales with folks from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. Our lab routinely uses it for counting penguins in Antarctica, for measuring the size of seals. We'll be using it next season in Antarctica for measuring whales. There's a lot of different whales that are working on with this, and hope to in the future. If it gets scientists out of aircraft, it's a good thing. That's a dangerous place to be. Let's go to the back in the blue.
Has there been any trials with hanging the camera over the hexacopter to get closer to silky noise?
No, there haven't been any trials. You know, one of the challenges is it's remarkable how quickly these animals actually move. So we constantly move in the hexacopter to keep up with them. So anything that would affect the aerodynamics of the package, I think, would be a problem. It would always be behind them and swinging around. But one thing that we found amazing, I don't think altitude is limiting us here. I mean, I don't think we need to fly less than 100 feet to get photogrammetry images, because they were so good, and that was just with a 25mm lens. We could use more lens if we needed to. The remarkable thing for me was that we were able to use shutter speeds that are high enough so we don't get vibration that comes from the aircraft, and that worked very effectively. Yes? One of the last video I showed was from our behavioral response flight that was 30 feet up. Yeah. There are some clips online. If you look at our NOAA, there was a NOAA podcast. If you search NOAA on the line, and also the Vancouver Aquarium had a blog. The 30-foot one isn't, the 100-foot one is available online. You can download them from those sites. Yes. Yes. Yeah, the question is, have we used any of the kind of 3D gaming glasses to view the camera in real time? We've thought about it. I wouldn't be wearing them. Holly would be wearing them when operating the ground station, because I constantly need to be looking at the hexacopter, making sure I can see its orientation relative to the whales and moving it. Right now, she kind of huddles over a ground station video and throws a towel over her head, so that might be an improvement. But one of the problems is that in order to get live video transmitted back from the hexacopter several hundred feet away to the ground station, we're just transmitting analog video, just a kind of a quick look at what the video looked like so she can guide me. So analog video wouldn't look very good on those digital glasses. So, I mean, it could be done. I think it would be useful in a situation where we had to walk around, for example, if you're on the deck of a bigger ship and we had to move rather than the ship. But on a small boat where the boat can move with them, it was much easier to sit in one place. But we have thought about it. Yes?
How do you anticipate using the data that you're collecting to save some resident killer whales?
The question is, how do we anticipate using this to save southern resident killer whales? My hope is that we will continue to monitor condition. We'll be able to fly, say, in the spring and the fall. If we go out in the spring when whales first show up and say, look, these whales are much skinnier than last year, My hope is that we can work with the management side of our agency to say that, and they could affect some management. Now, those kind of management steps are not in place yet. I mean, remember the workshop that I talked about with the independent science panel really said there was still a lot of uncertainty before we tried to do anything to change salmon fishing. Now, that is a dialogue that will continue, and the evidence will continue to be kind of weighed up. But our side of it, we will continue to provide as precise resolution as we can to say what condition the whales are in, working with Ken, working with our colleagues at NOAA, and hopefully there will be frameworks for using those data most effectively. One more in the middle here. Well, the northern and southern residents are feeding often on fish that are going to similar rivers, but of course they're coming in through a different direction. But also some of the rivers further north, they're not just feeding on Fraser River fish. So the northern residents have access to fish that are going to other rivers that are actually much healthier than some of the ones further south. So I think the bottom line is they probably have more fish. But we just don't know. That's a really good question, why the northern residents have recovered in much larger numbers. But it has to be due to prey base. You know, southern residents were exploited to a larger extent in terms of the live capture fisheries. Is there more ship traffic? The Johnson Strait is not a quiet place. It's probably a question for Val or someone else in terms of or Rob, if he's here, how much ship traffic. But both of them have ship traffic. But it's almost certainly the case that northern residents have access to more food. And maybe, again, there's significant data gaps in terms of where they are in the wintertime. So until we know exactly where they're feeding through their whole year, we don't really understand what their prey base is. Yes?
Have you done any similar studies on the transients that eat mammals rather than salmon?
Yeah, it's a great question. The question was about transients. Have we done similar studies? We hope to. In Johnson Strait this year, we had one group of transients, the T60s, that came through. We imaged them from the air, all 5 of them. What was fun is that we were able to see they were fat, really fat. Remember that head-width ratio? They were up at 0.13, 0.14, fatter than the fattest residents, but also the size difference. So an adult female transient was about 1 meter longer than an adult female resident. Now we knew that. We've been doing the laser metric work for 10 or 12 years on transients. I measured a lot of transients and residents in Alaska, so we knew that size difference. Transients are challenging. Any of you who've spent a lot of time in transients know that when they get into hunting mode, they can be very unpredictable. The hexacopters are just fine. We're able to move to them very quickly. They have short surfacing time sometimes, and we're able to get over the top of them, no problem. So it's something we, next year particularly, when we're in the Gulf Island area, we'll be trying to do a lot more. Howie, do we have more time, or should we end it there? Yeah, I think my son William and I will be around for lunch, so please come and ask us more questions. Unfortunately, we're not here this afternoon, so if you have any questions, come find us. Thank you.
Read something here. Couple of little announcements, and then we'll go get lunch. And one is Yvonne Coors bid $10 on something, and the artist has somehow changed the artwork, or something changed the offer. So go see Marty in the green shirt over there and straighten that out, please. Okay. Other thing is, there is more food for lunch. If anyone did not sign up, you can still get a $10 ticket for lunch and join us in the cafeteria in a few minutes. That's about it for the first portion of Ways of Wales 2015, so let's go get lunch.